You don't have to be in Rome to do as the Romans do. This fall, you can be on American college campuses and do as the Romans did, or might have done. Bob Fogg got wrapped up in the story at the University of Wisconsin.
This could be the 70s answer to streaking or swallowing goldfish. It is toga fever, and it is sweeping college campuses throughout the country.
You gotta have fun with a toga party, and there's nothing like it when you go down and put on a bed sheet and barefoot. That's the only way to go.
Organizers at University of Wisconsin fraternity billed this as the biggest toga party in the country and say almost 10,000 people attended. Some sported the classic Roman-style toga. Others were more creative.
Is you have to wrap it around very carefully and then wrap it under each arm and tie it, and the knot is the key.
It took a lot of time to figure out the forces and the vectors, etc., to figure out how to wear this.
The latest campus craze was triggered by the movie Animal House, in which a bawdy group of fraternity brothers, led by John Belushi, throws a wild toga party which scandalizes the community and which seems to have inspired collegians everywhere. Last night's bash was louder and more crowded. Despite 1,600 gallons of beer, it was also less raucous. But the spirit of Animal House was alive and well.
Everybody's going nuts.
A good time, all right.
Going wild, letting all your inhibitions out.
True, this is just a fad and it might seem silly, but to that and all other criticism, revelers have just one response. Bob Fall, CBS News, Madison, Wisconsin.
That's the education news. I'm Morton Dean, CBS News, New York. Have a good evening.
Back, fellas. Come on, out of the way.
Now for your sin, you're to suffer. Here it begins. Drag ropes forward, shame will save you. Out moves sinward, turn of the screw. told on manifold, and the truth can now be told on manifold, and the truth can now be told on manifold, and the truth can now be told on manifold, and the truth can now be told on manifold, and the truth can now be told on manifold, and the truth can now be told on manifold, and the truth can now be told on manifold, and the truth can now be told on manifold, and the truth can now be told on manifold, and the truth can now be told on manifold, and the truth can now be told on manifold, and the truth can now be told on manifold, and the truth can now be told on manifold, and the truth can now be told on manifold, and the truth can now be told on manifold, and the truth can now be told on manifold, and the truth can now be told on manifold, and the truth can now be told on manifold, and the truth can now be told on manifold, and the truth can now be told on manifold, and the truth can now be told on manifold, and the truth can now be told on manifold, and the truth can now be told on manifold, and the truth can now be told on manifold, and the truth can now be told on manifold, and the truth can now be told on manifold, and the truth can now be told on manifold, and the truth can now be told on manifold, and the truth can now be told on manifold, and the truth can now be told on manifold, and the truth can now be told on manifold, and the truth can now
Comedy actor John Belushi died today in Los Angeles. John Belushi was 33. Jerry Bowen looks at the career of the man who topped his Saturday Night Live television success with such movies as Animal House and Neighbors.
Belushi died at the Chateau Marmont, a Hollywood hotel favored by entertainers and rock stars. The cause of death reportedly natural causes. He got his start with the Second City Improvisation Group, then moved on as writer, actor, and director on the National Lampoon Radio Hour. Then Saturday Night Live, the show that gave him national prominence.
Let's go!
Then the movies, Belushi and his frequent co-star Dan Aykroyd with irreverent and sometimes bizarre sketches that delighted young people. They poked fun at Belushi's hometown of Chicago in the movie Blues Brothers. 2 years ago, he got an award at UCLA, and the performance was pure Belushi.
You know, I just thought there was something special with this one because it was voted by the students, and I wanted to come. I had nothing else to do, really, this afternoon. I feel funny about awards, you know. I like Emmys and Oscars and Grammys and all that, because you have to buy those. This...
John Belushi, dead today at the age of 33. Jerry Bowen, CBS News, Hollywood.
Pick this up for an hour.
Lorne Michaels, the original producer of Saturday Night Live, had this to say about Belushi's death.
Not the tragedy. The tragedy is that he, you know, his life was very full, and it was, and that it's been stopped. That's the tragedy. Comedy can get along
anyway, but we can try. And then I got the paramedics
directed them up here as fast as I could. That's about it.
Do you know if he's been ill? You said a lot of phlegm.
He had so much phlegm because he was on his back, and there was no one there to really help him and bring him around. When he did have heart failure, the phlegm just was too much, and his tongue, I cleared his tongue, but he had choked on his tongue, actually.
How do you know that it was heart failure? Has a doctor pronounced that?
No, I wouldn't know that for sure. I don't know that for sure.
This may be sensitive, but do you know if drugs at all were involved?
I have no idea on that. I really don't. As far as the man's life goes, or what he does with drugs or whatever on his spare time, I wouldn't know. I know that he's a heavy man, and that he might have had too much fat built.
Why don't you sit up front?
Sit up front with me, dude.
You know that door? I think that the other's just going to follow. Newt, you're going to have to sit up front.
Could you explain to us why this woman's being arrested?
No, there will be a statement made by the detectives.
Is it involved
shortly
with the Belushi case?
You'll have to talk to Lieutenant Jim McMurray. He'll give you your statement and your press release, okay? Thank you very much for your cooperation.
I don't know Bill's last name. You'd have to ask the assistant.
Hunter, you ready?
Came up and said to go up to Bungalow 3 that Mr. Belushi is having troubles. So I came up.
And why for her protection? What
Well, for everybody's. For everybody's. It's a continuing investigation. We don't know anything at this time. Yes, she's put for that reason. We don't know that.
Wait.
Good portion of it. April, come on. You want her? I'm going in. Right? You're down to your plate. There you go. Give this to me. Go ahead.
We'll see about your guitar later.
Okay. Follow her.
Is that shot?
Lenny, did you get enough of that up top, or did we cut you off? Once you get that. Yeah.
Mike might want to go down and go there.
Mike? You have down there who they were, who they are.
What are we trying to make, the pack update? What's that now? 5:30?
You know, they could throw it in a 4 o'clock in the show. Yeah, at least need a picture.
Okay.
London Douglas, London Douglas.
Go ahead.
Hello, hello. This is it.
20 minutes to actually get him back to here.
You called immediately on scene?
Bill had called immediately, right.
What kind of mood was he in the last time you saw him or someone saw him?
That I wouldn't know because I wasn't around him.
What time
But
is this?
evidently happy-go-lucky, very fine, you know. So there's no, he's not into drugs or anything, I know that. So I know he's a heavy man, and like I say, I think it was heart attack, and then he choked also.
Do you have any idea why he was in Los Angeles on this
He was
trip?
working with someone, I'm not quite sure, maybe Niro, to do something. He was here for something, but I don't know.
Do you have any idea how long he'd been here before this happened?
It's a week.
He'd been here about a week then?
About a week.
Why do you
I have to clarify that too, the
Why do you say you think he choked?
He choked because I found his tongue back where there was no air passage whatsoever.
He swallowed his tongue?
He had swallowed it, right.
Was there anything on the...
No food, no
Anything
nothing.
on the
His
table?
phlegm was nothing on the table. There was no signs of anything except for that man was sleeping and he woke up with a heart attack and hit the pillow again and choked himself.
No sign of any alcohol,
No
drugs,
alcohol.
party, nothing. Books?
I looked very
magazines,
well. There's
anything?
nothing.
Yeah.
There's nothing.
Who was his friend? Bill.
Bill, I don't know. I don't know Bill's last name, but
Is
he was.
still around?
I think he's in Bungalow 3.
Can I have your name?
My name's Bruce
Bruce.
Beckler, Boeckler,
And you are?
and I'm the daytime security gardener.
Any middle initial?
A.
How many
What's the name of the
bungalows in
hotel
this-
again?
Yeah, in this complex.
This has 4 bungalows.
Chateau Marmont.
What is it?
4
Want to spell
bungalows.
it?
And the name is what? Chateau
You got,
Marmont.
can you spell it, please?
I think it's Chateaua.
Up here? That one right there?
That's a car right there.
The Mercedes, I got it. Is that one right there?
Well, I'm not sure which one it is.
Normal, like he went to bed.
You mean somebody signed for the room service? Somebody
Yes.
was there at 8 o'clock this morning.
Yes.
Was it a man or a woman?
I have no idea at this point. That's up to the police. They're investigating that right now.
Was there a signature on the check?
I have not seen the check myself.
But he was alive, presumably, at 8 o'clock then?
Presumably, according to the paramedics when they arrived, they estimated the time of death about 10 o'clock. They assumed about 3 hours, and that was about 1 o'clock when they made that assumption.
Is there any special arrangement for parking, for the guest parking?
Well, Mr. Belushi had a private driveway.
So you would have no way of knowing the comings and goings of
No,
his car?
that's why he liked this, because he liked being a very private person.
How much is this bungalow cost?
$200 per evening.
Per day?
Yes, per day.
Is there any way of determining whether or not both bedrooms were used last night?
The second bedroom was totally made up, so I doubt if it was used.
Do you have unusual foods, room service, unusual foods? Is he on a special diet?
No, Mr. Belushi ordered from outside the hotel predominantly. He just ordered his breakfast here.
Someone signed for the check. We don't know who that
No, I don't know.
Did you know?
But Mr. Belushi had many friends that visited, so, I mean, at this point, that
You
is...
ready to go?
You know, no one knows.
Anything new, Dan?
No.
Again, Mr. Director.
Working on his film. He was just trying to meet his project.
Deliveries were made at 8 o'clock this morning to Belushi.
A movie, so he had a trainer that was keeping him running and working out with weights and keeping him in shape.
Was he jogging?
Not jogging per se, but there's a gym down at his studio, and he went down there to work out frequently. And that's the man who discovered the body, was the trainer. He had come to work out with him today.
Thunder, he's being questioned at Hollywood Station regarding a variety of issues. So we'll have to wait until we get that finalized yet.
Basically.
Did you ever see anybody else?
Excuse me. Who is it we're looking for out there? Come on, guys, leave her alone.
Be clear the road, please. Clear the road.
drove up in Mr. Belushi's car. At
slide out
that
and
point,
more
he
room
didn't know
than
what
my standing here.
weapon he had was the death of Mr. Belushi. So, caution and part of the investigation is to take him into custody and take him to the station for further questioning.
You know the lady's name?
No, I don't know her name.
Young, old?
I know her.
How will you be in a position to know if she's charged? You call by radio or something? So we don't miss it.
It's over here.
Let him through. Let him through.
Excuse me.
Los Angeles police say there is nothing to indicate at this time that John Belushi's death was anything other than by natural causes. That a very preliminary statement from the Los Angeles Police Department. Police detectives are inside here now, a bungalow at the Chateau Marmont in the Hollywood Hills, where Belushi died today. By all accounts, here is what happened. A physical training instructor of Belushi's, trying to get in touch with him this morning, could not reach Belushi on the telephone. He came over here concerned. The hotel also concerned because Belushi did not respond to a room service call. Inside the room, Belushi was found in bed. His physical training instructor and a security guard here tried to revive him through mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. They failed. Paramedics were called. They also failed. And John Belushi was pronounced dead around 12:30 this afternoon. He is still inside, and detectives are completing their investigation now. The coroner has not been called as yet. Again, the Los Angeles Police Department reports there is nothing to indicate that John Belushi's death was by anything other than natural causes. We'll have more on the 4 o'clock news. This is Mark Coogan reporting.
Going to be death by natural cause. We won't know positively the cause of death until the coroner conducts the autopsy.
Look like a heart attack?
Could be, yes. I can't really say just what the cause of death might be, but it appears to be natural at any rate.
Could you repeat that, please?
Yes, it appears that John Belushi may have died by natural cause. We don't know yet. We won't know until the coroner conducts the autopsy.
When will that be?
Let me come in over your shoulder.
It'll probably be over the weekend.
Why are the homicide detectives in there?
So they have to roll on any death call until they can be determined from the evidence, if any, what might have occurred. In this case, the detectives have found nothing to make it suspicious in any way.
Excuse me, there was a young woman who was taken away in handcuffs. Why was that?
She returned with a vehicle registered to Belushi. We didn't know what the circumstances might have been. She was taken into Hollywood Station for questioning. I don't have the results of that.
Again, we walked up late. Can you confirm that the deceased is John Belushi?
Yes, it is John Belushi.
What were the circumstances?
About 12:15, a friend of his came back to the apartment and found him on the bed. He tried to administer mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, and the paramedics were called when, to no avail at that point. The paramedics determined that about that time he'd been dead perhaps 2 to 3 hours.
That was at what time, paramedics?
I don't know their exact arrival time, but they're called around 12:30.
Is there anything unusual in this death that should warrant an investigation?
No, nothing at all at this
Had
point.
he been living alone here?
I don't know the circumstances of his living. From what I understand, he's been renting the apartment.
Tell us again, Lieutenant, what you know of the incident.
Yes,
The natural causes. What happened in finding John Belushi?
there doesn't seem to be anything that shows anything other than death by natural cause. Just what caused it, we don't know yet. That'll be up to the coroner.
I got problems. Yeah,
That's what it is. Outside now.
where they were, but I heard the radio.
Let us through, please. Let us through, please.
You okay? Oh, you all right?
That'd be real good, sir, if that would be all right with you.
Yeah.
Here you go. So you'll hear pictures.
Sir.
In a minute.
Okay.
Oh, we don't need an
I didn't think so, but...
I don't need that.
And then the stretcher went in.
Magic.
Just like magic.
You have a comment?
Doctor, could you step right up here? Right up here to the left. Right up here, to the right, sir.
Right about there.
That's good.
Relax.
Bring them out closer. You can bring them out here, please. Two steps forward. 2 steps forward, please. Thank you.
All right, that's fine. Okay, great.
Phil, you okay?
Actually, I don't have any comment. No comment pursuant to the order of the Board of Supervisors of Los Angeles County.
Why did you choose to come here today, Dr. Noguchi? Can you tell us that?
No comment.
Doctor, are you prohibited from offering any comments about any death to the media?
No comment.
What is that order by the Los Angeles County Board? Would you enunciate that for us?
I think it's very clear.
Doctor, what can you
Coroner
tell us
Noguchi,
about
will
the
you
body of
designate another spokesperson then to tell us about this case?
I'm sure that
Is there an assistant coroner you can have in?
Where's Dr. Kornblum?
Board of Supervisors. Yeah, they put a gag order on him.
Lean back, fellas.
Come on, out of the way. Out of the way. Out of the way. Out of the way.
Out of the way. Out of the way. Come on, make some You guys got to move it.
Okay, back up. Get back.
Give him a little room, folks. Come on.
Back it off. Back it up a little bit. Back it off.
Get crazy here. Get crazy.
Comic actor John Belushi died Friday. There are unconfirmed reports linking his death to a possible cocaine overdose. The 33-year-old Belushi, who built his career on routines of outrage and tumult, was buried today in a small New England graveyard. David Culhane was there in Martha's Vineyard, Massachusetts.
The wit, the laughter, the one-man parade of comic characters, they are gone now, for the world and for his family, for his wife, and for his mother. His friends were there, the singer James Taylor, and Lorne Michaels, the producer of the old Saturday Night Live. The Albanian Orthodox service was closed to the public, but one of John Belushi's agents reported what the priest said.
Then he talked about his talent and the joy and the entertainment that he gave to millions of people, and that unfortunately he will never be able to reach the full potential of his talent.
He also explained why Belushi wanted to be buried on this island in the Atlantic Ocean.
He requested that the services be here and be buried here because this is where he found his peaceful rest, away from the clamor and the world in which he lived.
And there was Dan Aykroyd, the other Blues brother, wild and crazy red, white, and blue scarf. He led the way to the cemetery on a motorcycle. At the graveside, one of the priests recalled a famous Belushi trademark. He said, "You can hear the call of his solitary warning. Wise up." The family said their farewells. Aykroyd picked a branch of evergreen and said his goodbye. The mourners departed. David Culhane, CBS News, Martha's Vineyard.
That's the CBS Evening News for this Tuesday. Dan Rather reporting from New York. Thank you for joining us. Good night.
speculation that drugs caused the death of comedian John Belushi was confirmed late yesterday in a Los Angeles County coroner's report that listed an overdose of cocaine and heroin as the official cause of Belushi's death. Los Angeles Police Chief Daryl Gates then confirmed that his men had been investigating that possibility ever since the discovery of Belushi's body in a Hollywood hotel last Friday.
We determined right from the outset that it clearly looked like an overdose, and it was the investigators' judgment that that overdose appeared to be cocaine and probably injected.
The coroner's report indicated that both drugs, cocaine and heroin, were found in Belushi's bungalow. Chief Gates said what happened to Belushi is symptomatic of a larger problem.
I think we're suffering a tragic loss, and I think these things ought to be brought out. I'm kind of happy that the media is continuing with this story, because I think the more you talk about it, the more it's going to call it to the public's attention that we have a terrible problem. And here's a terrible loss, a tragic loss, due to, for no reason at all, just junk.
The 33-year-old actor-comedian who rose to national prominence on the television program Saturday Night Live was buried Tuesday at Martha's Vineyard off the coast of Massachusetts. Harold Dowell, CBS News, Hollywood.
Freebasing type of use of cocaine. That was our information from the beginning. There was a substance found there, and it was determined to be cocaine.
Yes, we discussed the areas of potential investigation for the Los Angeles Police Department. There were a number of suggestions that we made, and I think that from those suggestions, certain areas are going to be explored by the Los Angeles Police Department.
Can you tell us what they are?
Yes, based on the information contained in an article recently published, specifically in the National Enquirer, Cathy Smith, who is an individual who was with Mr. Belushi on the night of his death, night and morning of his death, indicated certain activities on her part with relationship to Mr. Belushi. That suggests some areas that the Los Angeles Police Department should investigate, specifically the people who were with her and Mr. Belushi during the course of the night and morning hours, and the people who know Miss Smith herself, the people who wrote the article, so that we can establish whether or not, in fact, the statements in the article attributed to Miss Smith are true or not.
Does that mean that the Belushi case has officially been reopened?
I'm not sure the Belushi case was ever officially closed. All we are suggesting to the Los Angeles Police Department is that these avenues of investigation be explored.
Mr. Gentleman, are you saying that the police then may have done an investigation that was not thorough?
No, I'm not suggesting that. What I'm saying is that the article has suggested areas of investigation which were not apparent before. And what we're trying to do now is, since they have been suggested, is to further explore those areas.
Why did it take an article in the National Enquirer to bring you to this point where you would open the investigation? Heretofore, there had been an article in Rolling Stone and also a piece on 2020, but it took the National Enquirer to reopen the investigation.
What you have to have is you have to have an area that you should explore, and by that, you can't go by way of innuendo or rumor or anything of that nature. What you have to have is some solid material, and what we have in this article is the appearance of someone who is apparently confessing to potentially having committed second-degree murder and furnishing heroin. These are both extremely serious felonies, and until you have a lead like that to explore, you can't go on rumor or somebody saying, I heard from somebody who heard from somebody that this occurred. Every time you explore a lead like that, it generally proves unfruitful. And so in no way are we faulting the Los Angeles Police Department. We are merely suggesting from this article that these leads be explored.
Okay, here's a situation where you have this woman who narcotics paraphernalia was found in her possession. She was not detained. The questioning took place in which none of which the stuff that showed up in the article actually took place. How can you call that investigation thorough?
My answer to you is very simple. Sometimes people will not talk to police officers. Sometimes they will talk to people like reporters. They'll sometimes talk to people who are sitting on a bar stool next to them rather than talk to police officers. And you can only go on the information that you've got. In this case, Kathy Smith was interviewed for approximately 2.5 hours at the time of the killing. That information was tape recorded, and during the course of that process, she did not incriminate herself in this kind of manner. Only when a person does choose to incriminate themselves, if you don't have the extrinsic evidence that points to it, can you in any way investigate. And here we have a totally different situation. We have new evidence, and that's what we're trying to establish.
Why were Robin Williams and Robert De Niro questioned?
Are they going to be questioned? We have suggested that, yes. They are apparently, according to that article, amongst the people who were with Mr. Belushi during the critical period, and we have suggested those amongst others. The only reason we are suggesting that is not because of any suggestion of criminal conduct on their part. That's not in the course of the investigation. It is only because we are trying to either corroborate the statements that were made in the article or in some way vitiate them.
Do you know why they weren't questioned already?
Because there was nothing, I would assume, to suggest that they should be. What we have now is something very clearly which suggests that they might be witnesses to criminal conduct or may have some bearing on what occurred during those critical hours, which is important at this time.
But what about Kathy Smith? She, I understand, is in Canada.
That's right.
How will you get to her for questioning?
My answer is that's in the hands of the investigative agency, that's the police. I mean, the first step is to make a simple phone call. You start with that. I'm not going to suggest how they do it. They're the investigators on the case. We have merely suggested that as an avenue to explore.
Let's talk about.
I'm sorry.
Do you anticipate any kind of problem tracking?
Well, certainly, if somebody is out of the country, you anticipate problems. What those problems will be, I don't know. That's again up to the ingenuity of the investigators on the case.
Have you contacted the National Enquirer, and do they stand by their story?
One of the suggestions we made is that the National Enquirer be contacted. First, we are interested as to how those statements can be corroborated. Were there tape recordings of the statements made? Was there a stenographer present? We have also been advised of the fact that money exchange hands. We would like to know how much, and if there are any contracts involved, we would like to see those contracts. Someone, for a limited period of time, they have certain rights. Every citizen does, and police can only hold somebody in custody for limited periods of time if there is no intention to charge them.
Decide officially to reopen.
That depends upon how long it takes the police. Certainly, the Los Angeles Police Department is very amenable to the investigation, and I have every confidence.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that process will start now. You can't start that process until you literally start the process, and that was what we were about this morning.
Who are you going to be in touch with in the police department? Who's your liaison? How's the mechanics?
The lieutenant is Edward Hawkins in the conference this morning.
Have you been in touch with the Belushi family at all?
No, but that is certainly also one of the suggestions that we made this morning.
Someone, a detective, telling the Herald Examiner the investigation is at a standstill. Suddenly you have the National Enquirer, hardly what you might call a bastion of respectable journalism, and a Herald Examiner suddenly saying, and then everybody's reopening the investigation. How does that look?
We don't use rubber hoses, we don't use things like that. And therefore, she decided not to talk to us or limited what she would state. That was it.
Did she refuse during those initial interviews to discuss questions involving the narcotics transactions or activities that might have occurred the night that Belushi died?
Yeah, I do not know. I'm sorry.
So the articles I have read suggest the police did not feel there was a need to reopen the investigation. Have you changed your mind today?
No, I can't say that we're reopening the investigation. We submitted this article to the district attorney's office, and what I just found out now from Mr. Gentlin was that the article jointly was received by their office also, just about the same time. And so we're just coming in agreement that if there does appear to be additional items that should be looked into, then we're certainly going to do that.
You are agreeable to pursuing the matter?
Oh, absolutely. Certainly.
Is it safe to say that the investigators assigned to this case will be carrying out those steps, getting in touch with the newspaper, getting in touch with the woman, Kathy Smith, the others?
We'll be exploring every avenue that the district attorney's office has suggested, yes.
Has that already begun, Lieutenant? Have your investigators begun trying to contact the Enquirer reporters or Ms. Smith or her attorney or the other people mentioned in the Enquirer piece?
Our actions are somewhat limited by what the district attorney's office will file, and therefore we submitted to him for review, and at that time, which is just now, we just became aware of what his suggestions were, and we will now attempt to review it first and decide in what plan of action we will take.
How will you go about getting to Kathy Smith, which I understand is in Canada? Does that involve extradition?
It will be governed strictly by the investigators that will be handling the case.
Right. Do you see any problems?
Obey those.
What about the other people who were supposedly present there, De Niro and is it possible that they could simply refuse to?
When a citizen sees the investigatory capabilities of the people doing the investigation, that a police department or a district attorney can't call up Robert De Niro and say, "This is a police department. Can I have a word with you?"
I just have no knowledge of what you're speaking of.
Do you feel that the police department's investigation has been thorough to this point?
As I mentioned, I just came on the case, and I'm reviewing the case at this time.
Do you have any idea why Robin Williams or Robert De Niro? Do you see any difficulty?
I don't know. Not until we ask, and then I'll know.
Could you plot out for us the course of the investigation from henceforth? Where's your first stop, and where are you going to be going from here?
First stop will be a meeting together what the recommendations are, and we'll make every attempt to work with the district attorney.
Has that been scheduled yet?
I can't tell you. It depends how difficult to reach some of these people, how cooperative some of the...
Obviously, attempts are already underway to contact Kathy Smith, who's reportedly in Canada at the moment, also Belushi's own family. Officials cannot say just how long this new thrust of the investigation will take, nor will they speculate on what new charges could be filed as a result of what they find. From downtown Los Angeles, I'm Joanne Ishimina, Channel 7 Eyewitness News. That was version 1, this is version 2. So technically, the Belushi case has been reactivated. Officials cannot say just how long this new thrust of the investigation will take, nor will they speculate on what new charges could be filed as a result of what they find. From downtown Los Angeles, I'm Joanne Ishimina, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
We're here to announce that the Canadian courts in Canada, the equivalent of our Superior Court, has conducted a hearing on Catherine Evelyn Smith, who we're alleging killed John Belushi. And that court, we're pleased to announce, has determined that she should be returned to Los Angeles to face trial for the death of John Belushi and also the 13 additional counts which we've alleged against her in a grand jury indictment for furnishing and administering cocaine and heroin to John Belushi shortly before his death. This is a major step in the legal battle which we have been carrying on with tremendous assistance from the Crown Counsel, that is the prosecutor, in Toronto, Canada. They represented our interests there in this case and have prosecuted the matter in terms of extradition before the courts of Canada. It's been a long process through appeals. It's come back now to their equivalent of our Superior Court. That judge has ruled that Kathy Smith should be returned to Los Angeles to stand trial. She will be ordered into custody and will have 15 days to file a subsequent appeal in Canada. If she does that, we can expect some additional delay, but ultimately we will have her back here and facing the Superior Court of Los Angeles County for trial on these particular counts.
Just how strong is that evidence? Will it still hold up?
Oh yes, the evidence hasn't changed at all. The case is older, but is no less strong than it was originally. It may be of interest just to recap a little bit. Her original allegations through her counsel in Canada were that at the extradition hearing, we would have to send witnesses all the way from California to Toronto to testify in the hearing. We didn't think that was necessary under the Canadian law. The Canadian prosecutor agreed with us, and the court so ruled. That then became an issue on appeal in Canada. It went all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada. The Supreme Court of Canada agreed with us, sent it back to the Superior Court level there. That's the hearing that has now taken place without the necessity of having witnesses there. She once again, of course, will have the right to appeal in Canada the actual decision to have her extradited. We expect that that's going to go a lot more swiftly than it has in the past, since the Canadian courts have already seen this case once, and they do tend to operate a little more quickly than our courts in California.
What are you looking at for a length of time, assuming that she does go forward with an appeal, Mr. Filibosian? What's your best guess as to what...
I'm expecting that we should have her back here in Los Angeles within 2 to 6 months. At that time, we can proceed to arraign her, and we will arraign her immediately in the Superior Court and get a trial date set and proceed with a trial.
Previously, murder charges are you filing?
Let Bob ask his
I was just going to say, previously, one of your deputies, I think, had said that it might be as long as 2 years before she returned. Is there anything that's changed to make you feel that it might be a much more rapid process now?
Yes, the difference is that this has already gone through the Canadian courts once. They've seen the case. They're somewhat familiar with the issues. I think on the second pass-through, it's going to go a lot more quickly.
Thank you.
There's always a potential when you have any kind of legal proceedings that it might take more time than you expect. But as I said, they seem to be more efficient in Canada, in Toronto, and in the country of Canada than we are, particularly in California.
Is your 2 to 6 month period, or your estimation, really highly optimistic?
I wouldn't say it's highly optimistic. I say it's a realistic, practical type of an estimation.
Back to those charges, Mr. Filibosian. What degree murder charge?
We charge murder. We don't charge it by degree, but what we're talking about here is a second-degree murder. And that was, as we're alleging, and the grand jury found in its indictment, the administering of what was called a speedball combination of heroin and cocaine. So what we're dealing with Kathy Smith is not just our allegation that she's a murderer, but she's a drug trafficker. And we've all heard the slogans, LA's the place. I've got another slogan for anyone who commits a crime, particularly narcotics trafficking, and then tries to flee. LA's not the place.
Concerning, it's been 2 years now since John Belushi died. There's been too much publicity, some people have said. Do you think there's a possibility the case might be thrown out because it would be impossible to get a fair trial?
No, we've had many other publicity cases tried in Los Angeles County. The killing of Bobby Kennedy, probably the most covered event. The Manson killings. All of these cases and many others were covered by the media throughout the world, as a matter of fact, in the Bobby Kennedy case. And the Manson case, both. Both cases were tried in Los Angeles County. Both were tried fairly. Both have gone up on appeal. No problems. I don't expect a problem with this case.
Has there ever been a bestseller that's been written about the murder of the person involved?
I think the bestseller makes any difference one way or another. I would say probably that just based on the coverage from the electronic media and the print media that the Kennedy case had or the Manson case had. Los Angeles County, and the trial will not return into any type of
How many witnesses would you say you have?
Well, I can't comment on that there will be celebrity witnesses. What I'm saying is, whenever we have had celebrity witnesses in Los Angeles, those are the things I can't go into.
Mr. Filibosian, there's been repeated speculation that Catherine Evelyn Smith was an informant for the Los Angeles...
We start calling the witnesses. That's something that's not going to be known.
Just one follow-up, if I may. Has there ever been office on this kind of a charge of someone causing a murder through the administering of a speedball?
Yes, there have been.
I see.
Not necessarily a speed in this type of a proceeding in Canada. And within the next 15 days, I have no doubt that they will try to take that particular tactic.
Has there been any communication?
The judge in Canada ruled that the Canadian law and the California law are sufficiently similar. Even though they use the term manslaughter in Canada and we use the term murder in California, the judge there ruled that the conduct is the same. He says it doesn't make any difference what you call it. We're talking about the same type of conduct. It is an extraditable offense. Based on the reasoning of the judge, based on our understanding of Canadian law, and based on the fact that this case has already been reviewed, not on that specific point, but on the point of the necessity of witnesses, I'm confident that the Canadian courts will agree with the Superior Court there, with the Canadian Crown Counsel, and with our position. Well, I wasn't DA at the time, so I don't know. I wasn't that familiar with the case. Ask John Van de Kamp.
You say you're anticipating a trial as soon as 2 to 6 months, or is that just when you...
Her return 2 to 6 months. She has the right to demand a post-indictment preliminary hearing.
Filibosian says he expects Smith's attorneys to appeal the extradition rulings. As to when she will return to Los Angeles to face murder charges, Filibosian says it could be any time between 2 to 6 months. Henry Alfaro reporting for Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
The talented actor and comedian John Belushi died from an overdose of drugs. Pat Collins takes a look back.
Bill, in the year since John Belushi's death, the grand jury in Los Angeles has been hearing testimony in the matter and will resume its inquiry next Thursday. While the circumstances of his death remain a mystery, the work Belushi left behind unquestionably shows a comic genius in the making. From Saturday Night Live to a bankable movie star on the strength of the top-grossing comedy Animal House.
Nothing is over until we decide it is. Was it over when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor? Hell no!
Sherman? Forget it, he's rolling.
It ain't over now. Because when the going gets tough, the tough get going. Who's with me? Let's go! Come on!
He had a tremendous presence, and he had a way of shaking things up and making people look at something and saying, you know, take a look at this and think about it. He had a tremendous energy, and people felt that, and I still feel it. And even though I know the energy has moved on, I feel some of it still. And I think that was impressive to people.
Did some of these characters get in the way? Did you feel that you had a crowded house?
No, it wasn't. I didn't really feel that way about it. It's more in retrospect when I think about it. I realize how affected he was by them. For instance, when he was doing the Blues Brothers, getting the band together, he was very much into wearing the pork pie hat and dark sunglasses and dark jacket, and we had to go to clubs all the time and see all the new bands, and that one kind of got in the way. Bluto was written for him, and it was taking things about him and exaggerating them. It didn't seem to enter our life at all. That was the one character he didn't seem to pick up on as he did it. In fact, when he came home, he was very quiet. And then another one that he did a lot around the house, which was interesting, was the samurai. When he was first developing it, and he got his robe on, and he'd be walking around the house, and I gave him this big pole that we had in the house, and he started using that, and suddenly he's swinging, and I'm grabbing lamps, you know.
Are you concerned that he will be remembered 5, 10, 20 years down the line as the man who died of a drug overdose rather than for all that talent?
I'm concerned with that, yeah. And indeed, I think part of the reason he died was because it wasn't a lifestyle that he lived, and therefore it's more of a shock to your body. And I think that's important for kids who admired him as a hero, whatever happens to, he was an actor and a man and all those things, but you take on other images. And I think it's important for kids or anyone who admired him to understand the struggle he went through with that, and to realize the dangers involved, and what he was trying to do with his life, which I think was to live it, not to destroy it. It'd be easy to blame someone, and if I have to blame someone, I think it's John.
Will you be consoled to know the truth of what happened?
I'm not supposed to talk much. I'm not supposed to comment on the investigation itself.
That I know, of course. Yeah.
And I think I do know and understand what happened pretty much. There were things that were being said or told, or that I was told by the police or by the press or whatever, that just didn't make sense and weren't, I knew something was wrong. And that part's been cleared up for me. And it makes it easier somehow.
What of the many things he did in character made you laugh?
Most of his characters made me laugh. I don't have a favorite. I don't really.
And he made you laugh in your own real life.
Oh, yeah.
Too,
I think we made each other laugh. We laughed all the time. That's why I'm so thin. I guess I didn't make him laugh as much.
This is Captain James T. Kirk of the Starship Enterprise. Identify yourself. Guerrilla warfare is, as everyone who has been a guerrilla knows, requires dedication and a lot of hard work, which goes unappreciated. So I'd like to thank the guerrillas in southern Lebanon. This is for you guys.
Judy Belushi said that John's toughest time came after the enormous success of Animal House and the Blues Brothers, when he fully realized what it meant to be famous. He was in the process of learning how to deal with that fame when he died.
Thank you, Pat. We're going to have some fashion tips by Holston.
Tomorrow marks the 25th anniversary of the Second City Comedy Troupe. Now, if you haven't heard of the Second City, you've certainly heard of its alumni. People like David Steinberg, Joan Rivers, Alan Alda, John Belushi, Dan Aykroyd, Bill Murray. We have a report tonight from Frank Currier on the Second City, the comedy troupe that's been a comedy school.
In an old Chicago cabaret, the main show is over. But for the Second City players, the biggest act is still to come.
As you know, all of the scenes that you saw tonight were at one time based on audience suggestions, then they were improvised. So we come to you now for those suggestions. You give us good suggestions, you come back in a couple of months, pay $6-7, see a scene you wrote.
It's called improvisation, a comedy tradition here at Second City for 25 years.
Take the original S-curve.
The players perform without scripts or props, lampooning everyday life.
You know that you were doing 2,000 in a 60-mile-an-hour zone?
It all began in 1959 with an ensemble of liberal, middle-class intellectuals from the University of Chicago, bent on social commentary and political satire.
Evidently, we hit a nerve. It was time to return to talking about the world again, and talking about politics and talking about all the things we talk about. And we were off.
Early sketches focused on a world without heroes, of streetwise beatniks and neurotic housewives, here in an art museum.
You dig that, huh?
Well, what do you mean by that?
A dig?
Yes.
I mean, does it grab you?
Oh, what an interesting idea.
Through the years, Second City has been a star factory to the entertainment industry. The many alumni from Chicago and its sister company in Toronto read like a who's who of comedy.
It teaches you how to find the funny element in what you see around you in your life. And people say, oh, she's from Second City. Well, okay, call her in, you know, she's probably funny.
The Tonight Show's specifically related to Second City. You take chances, you improvise off of an idea. The more chance you take and the more you improvise, the better the result.
TV comedian Jim Belushi recalls the day his late brother John first brought him down to the theater.
He brought me down there when I was 16 years old. I was blown away. The electricity coming from the stage was something you never forget. And I waited 6 years to audition because of the spontaneity and the excitement and the freshness of improvisation as a form of performing.
For the audience, the appeal of late-night improvisation is measured by the unpredictable.
You want to clean your palate with something like Jell-O.
Just passing through. The audience will tell you when you're funny and when you're not. You'll find out if you're good or bad. They'll let you know what your range is. You can take chances. You can fail and still come back the next night.
Midlife crisis, grown.
Sob.
Oh, Miss Jones.
Oh, good neighbor Bob.
And night after night, for 25 years, the Second City players have been coming back.
Guilt.
Remorse.
I love you, sweet.
I'll put the bird in the microwave.
Let's eat. Fast living, we're driven and we're living.
Frank Courier, CBS News, Chicago.
And that's the news. I'm Bob Schieffer.
It will be
CBS.
some time before we know for sure what killed 33-year-old Chris Farley, one of America's best-known combined actors and comedians. But tonight, correspondent Carol Marine of CBS News and CBS station WBBM News 2 Chicago reports some of what Farley was doing in the final days and hours of his life.
An autopsy was performed this morning by the Cook County Medical Examiner, but toxicology reports, which will determine how Farley died, may not be complete for weeks. Farley's body was discovered yesterday in his luxury apartment in Chicago's John Hancock Center. Police say there was no sign of foul play and no drugs were discovered in his condominium. But one published report says drug use may have been the reason he died. And CBS News has learned 2 days before his death, Chris Farley contacted a Chicago escort service. Tuesday afternoon was spent, according to a source, drinking alcohol and smoking marijuana. Farley's offstage life of alcohol and drug abuse had been widely known throughout his career. But friends like Joyce Sloan, a longtime producer from Chicago's Second City comedy troupe, say there was another side to Farley.
He was very religious. I don't know if you know that or not. He often went to Mass. Chris had so many demons, and he couldn't fight them.
His acting idol was John Belushi. Both men shared a history of outrageousness. Not only on the screen, but off the screen as well. Belushi died at the age of 33 from a drug overdose. Was he fatalistic about living very long?
I think he wanted to go like John at 33.
One friend saying, comedians like Chris Farley use their comedy to win the applause of strangers, but sometimes no amount of public approval can silence their personal demons. Carol Marine, CBS News, Chicago.